welcome back to another episode of PODCAD. We are joined here today with a very transformative man. We have an industrial design student turned coffeeholic, turned kicksaholic, a creative director turned creative consultant, and a certified Toronto man who turned his passion for coffee and sneakers into a full-time side hustle, according to BlogTO.
Yes.
We are here with Luke, the CEO. How are you doing?
I'm good, guys. Thank you for having me. Oh my God, that was great.
Thank you.
Pulled the BlogTO reference right out in front of me. Oh man.
Luke, what do
you
you got on feet right now?
You know, we're doing something light. You know, we got
Classics.
classics. I like to keep the classics. You know, Jordan Ford, Fire Reds. Nothing crazy. Just if I'm gonna get a shoe, it's got to be either special or some sort of classic, got some heritage. Yeah, nothing crazy.
Yeah.
What are these guys rocking over here?
We'll go around.
Timberland waterproof
On his tippies.
with the yes.
That's a good movement here.
Got the
Doc Martin.
no lace.
guy's
The
got
Chelsea
class.
boot.
Man.
I got
Every
the
day.
the dunk.
Oh, there's a little bit of tape on there.
I've seen better days, but high top, good for skating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what you got in the cup?
Which one in the cup? This is a nice black cup of hot Joe that isn't water.
Oh, magnificent.
Nice.
That's totally not water. I'm joking. I've probably had 6 coffees today, and I threw one out as I walked through the door before I saw Alex in the lobby, and he's like, "Hey, you want a coffee?"
Yeah, that was my next question. How many cups have you had?
How many cups?
You know, it keeps me alive in the sense where, like, if you're gonna be crazy and do a ton of work and put yourself all over the place, the only thing that's gonna help me keep the energy is have a bunch of coffee. So
Keep you moving.
Sounds like something a CEO would say.
Yeah.
You know what? I gotta admit, since the last time we were on the podcast, I said I was drinking instant coffee. I've upgraded since then.
Okay.
I have a
to the K cut. No, I'm joking.
No, I have a $10,000 machine.
Oh,
No, I got a Nespresso.
okay. That's good. That's good.
It's a step up.
Hey,
No.
absolutely. I think I am a non-coffee. There's no shame in
Oh, okay.
coffee is coffee, and if it's accessible for
Yeah.
you and it works for your system, like, hey,
You know
there's,
what? Yeah.
there's one thing to like shame people over doing something differently or not.
Yeah.
Like nobody's a barista. Like
Yeah.
I'm very surprised. Like I got a crazy kind of coffee setup at home that I've put together, and I kind of forcefully got my family to
Yeah.
use it, and it's turned into like they're like, oh, this isn't that bad, but it's still I could see that they're like,
Yeah.
I just want to click a button. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
we'll put it back, but
I
no.
imagine it's
Yeah.
like
Can you walk us through your morning coffee routine? Like, what is like your step-by-step process? How do you
It's-
wake up
Yeah.
and then what do you do?
It's a bit wild in the sense where how I've got it set up is I've got my machine on a timer. So I've got a semiotic espresso machine where it's like a barista, it's like a coffee shop prosumer machine, but the whole thing is like dimmed down into a pocket-sized version that you can have at home. So what comes with that is like it's gotta warm up every morning. It's gotta do all this stuff. Like you have to prepare it, dial it in. So I have it on a timer at about like 6 o'clock. I always hear the joke of my dad every morning because he's not a coffee drinker at all. We're full Italians. It's a shocker for everybody. I
Yeah.
know that is what it is. I can't change them. But the rest of my family is coffee drinker, and at like 6 o'clock, I have this auto timer, and it goes on, and it goes, and it like shakes the entire kitchen for like 35 seconds, and then it stops because it's like filling the boiler.
and everyone
Everyone scurries
down.
into the kitchen because it warms up for 15 minutes, and then by the time I groggy wake up, whether that's at like 7 o'clock or like 10:45, like whatever time I wake up, it's always hot and ready, which is sick. But yeah, it's nothing crazy. I mean, it's like if you go to a coffee shop, grind coffee, temp, distribute.
See, that's
put a
why they
machine
say wake up and smell the coffee, right?
Absolutely, like
Yeah.
wake up and smell the work. It gets you going.
Yeah.
For the longest time, actually, surprisingly, like I actually only would use the machine on the weekend because I admit it, I'm not a morning person. Like I'm a wake up 10 minutes before I need to get out the door, and I'm getting ready in 9 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and then leaving. And for the longest time, like while I was working full time, there was coffee at the office, so I would just like use that as my inertia. I'd be like, I just want to have a
Yeah.
cup of coffee. Okay, get to work first.
Yeah.
And like that was the tradition for a long time. But I mean, now that I'm home a lot more,
Yeah.
it's forcing me to like not forcing me. I gladly use
Does
my
the home
machine.
coffee.
Yeah, gladly
Yeah.
get that thing into more use. And like, I would hear my mom or my brothers kind of like getting on it, and it makes some noise every time. So I'd hear it. It was getting used. It's not like it's missing me or anything.
Yeah.
But now it's getting a lot more attention. So
Yeah.
The next step is the machine in the car. It's on the very back seat. You know, like you're late.
or
and it's
the-
like,
the
that is
backpack.
that's like one. There's like
the
one
camelback.
post on Instagram. I feel like everyone who is in like some sort of niche always gets like the one aunt or uncle or that one person you never talk to that. Hey, this is so you. And there's one post on Instagram where it's like in the 1940s, Volvo made a car plug-in espresso machine. I get that post sent to me
all the time.
by like. And thank you, friends and family who sent it to me. I appreciate all your love and thinking of me. I just want everyone to know I get that post like every month by somebody. Oh, this is hilarious. This is. I'm like, oh, I know. I've seen it before. Oh, I've seen it before. I've had somebody send it to me twice. So I was like, but no, that's like, coffee's crazy. There's so much stuff out there. Like
Yeah.
the tech. I mean, I think I fell into it kind of accidentally because of OCAD and industrial design. And you mentioned Toronto man. I'm actually a Vaughan man, trying to be a Toronto man. I'm actually a
Imposter.
big poser. But
Hey, BlogTO certified.
yeah, hey,
Yeah,
hey, I got
yeah,
the
yeah.
credentials now.
If
That's
anyone
it. I can
is a
get the
Toronto
fake
man.
ID. But yeah, I think OCAD kind of turned me into a coffee man because of like all of the ID background. Like it's so product heavy and thing heavy that it's like hard not
Yeah.
to fall in love with the process that requires you to buy a bunch of physical objects
Yeah.
and tools and
Equipment, yeah.
equipment. And then like, yeah, I think being
Yeah.
in Toronto, it forced me to get out there. So
Yeah, I think your cold brews during GradX really elevated
Yeah,
Aaron's movement.
no,
I wouldn't have been
for
able
real.
to record any podcasts.
yeah, no,
so.
that was super sick too, and that was kind of like a funny, crazy coincidence where through the work I was doing at OCAD, that kind of started the Instagram, and the Instagram kind of made me a bunch of connections where a homie of mine who's actually developing that brand of the cold brew machine, Brewed is the company. He actually was trying to hire me for a long time, and I would love to work for him. But at the time, I was like, I need to just finish school. I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for
I
sure.
can't get this full-time job before I finish school, which sounds like a good problem to have, but I mean, yeah, he hooked it up, and they ended up connecting where I was working with full-time, and they worked something out, and where I was working full-time became a distributor of the machine. So, hey, I was
Full circle,
glad to get the homies cold brew through GradX. I think hopefully people keep doing that. I don't know how GradX is going to be now. Maybe
no coffee.
No.
And no kicks.
yeah, it's cold out there. It's cold out there. Hey, I think ID set the bar that year.
Yeah, it
I-
did. It was a strong year for ID.
I think
Yeah.
I heard from multiple profs proudly that they're like, this is the most people we've seen on opening night. It's like a party. This is like, it's usually so scientific. Like, it's usually a science fair. Look at all the people. Like, we got coffee.
Yeah.
Adam's playing music, this, that, whatever. I thought it was super fun. So,
Yeah.
hey, the prof's been there for 10 years and he's saying that this is the best GradX. I'm like, do one of these. Good
Yeah.
team.
It's been
I
2 years now since
Yeah.
you graduated.
So catch us up on
The lore,
roadmap.
yeah.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
low, like post school.
Yes.
School.
So there was approximately 3.5 minutes of relaxation, and then I went back into
I
work.
guess.
Nice.
It's good.
But
Followed by a coffee.
followed by a coffee job. What was really cool was while I was finishing school through Coffee and Kicks and doing all that stuff, I was able to get a job. I was working freelance for a really awesome company called FIMA Canada in Toronto. They're a equipment distributor for restaurant and coffee equipment. So while I was finishing my thesis, finishing the final kind of projects and courses and everything, I got connected with the people over there, and specifically their younger generation kind of pulled me on and saw that I was a young, conveniently Italian, like creative that was interested in
loved
coffee
coffee,
and
yeah.
was into the stuff that they did and took me on board to do a bunch of freelance projects. And what was wild was the second I was done school, like they were very committed to taking me on full time. So since OCAD up until about a week ago, which is crazy, I've been there, transitioned from freelance to full-time position, which I was a creative director there. For about 3 years I spent, or 2 and a bit, I think it's been since I was working there a lot while I was finishing my thesis as well. So I think I sort of grouped that year maybe a little bit longer than actually before after I graduated. But yeah, it was super cool. I basically have been there kind of honing everything I've wanted to do until then. Learned a ton of new skills, met a bunch of cool people, like worked on some crazy projects, and I think.
So what are you working on now?
So working on now is to piggyback off that, although I absolutely loved being there, and the environment and the content and the category of what I was working on was amazing. It's hard not to ignore, like, being a creative. I know everyone maybe listening to this, or you guys know, like, how much just people ask you to do stuff. Like, hey, you know how to make a logo? Oh, can you make this? Or friend of a friend.
Can you paint my dog?
Yeah. Hey, can you do this? Or do you design? Oh, you're in design school? Oh, can you help me make a T-shirt for my company? Or can you help me make business cards? Or
The
this?
answer is always no.
Yes.
No.
Except for when you're a person like me, who it's always like, yeah, just I'll let you know later. And
Yeah.
that has
Yeah.
been 6 years for
Yes,
some
yeah.
people.
Procrastinator. Yeah,
That
that's
is
literally
the
me.
designer way to
Yeah,
say no to
exactly.
someone. Yeah.
And
like-
then take on a project that's way too big and complicated, and then
Yeah.
don't even finish that.
No, the correct way is to just say your fee,
Yeah,
and then they
exactly.
never contact you again.
Exactly. That's the way to
It's
do
the
it. And, like,
eloquent way. Just like put it off. Like, oh yeah, maybe next week. Oh, I'm super busy right now.
yeah. Maybe I'll call you in 2024. This is 2019. But no, like in a funny way, like that type of interaction has happened so much my entire life. Like, even like, I mean, again, like, as a creative, you don't just become a creative once you go to university. I think you're always sort of like in that mindset or doing those things. All throughout university, all throughout working, I've always had friends, family, people that just like give me big ideas or small ideas, and I've always just subconsciously written them down, or like noted them, or just like created a bit of a list. And then from that list, I would do like, okay, who seems serious? What like do I want to do? What do I not want to do? And that list just kept on getting bigger and bigger. And although I absolutely loved what I was doing day to day, there was just too much to ignore and too much interest. Like, there was stuff in there that like I really wanted to give time and date, like my energy to, but it was like gladly giving 150% at my full-time job. But then it's like, now I'm sacrificing Friday nights. I'm sacrificing Friday nights rolling into Saturday mornings at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Rolling into like, I'm trying to finish this freelance project for a friend of a friend on Sunday at 4:30, and I have to go to work at 9 o'clock the next day. And like, that got a little bit crazy in the sense where I was trying to get too much of the best of both worlds.
Right.
And it bites you, because then it sacrifices your energy and your quality during the day, but then it's also sacrificing, like, it doesn't become something that you love. It's like, I wanted to do this project because it was so interesting and exciting, but it became kind of a nuisance, because like, now I can't go to dinner, or like I can't go to that like birthday party because like I promised somebody I'd finish that thing. So the transition now, I think the question I think I went crazy off was like, what I'm up to now is I kind of categorized those big ideas, and I really was kind of just like taking a step back and like what I wanted to do and how to tackle them. And I realized that most of the things I got asked to do were under the different categories. Like, the one was all throughout university and even high school. I was painting murals under a name, Lucid Murals, which I really loved, and I had a ton of fun doing that. There were big projects, and like, especially in university, they were really time consuming. There was a lot of thought, a lot of energy, a lot of like time and effort invested in it, but they paid really well. And like, I could do one of those murals and not have a part-time job, because I did 1 or 2 of those a month. And like, although that was awesome, it was like I was still managing school, and like I was doing them on the weekends, same sort of deal. And like, so that was something I was interested in, because like there were so many opportunities in that. Like, once people find out you paint murals, like every business in the world is like, oh, we want a mural, even if they don't
I
actually.
think I ran into you once, and you were like fully
just
caked and
covered in paint.
Yeah.
I have absolutely cooked about 40 Gildan hoodies, and I love them because I have like a box of them, and I'm gonna do something cool with them later on. But like, it's not like the super like, oh, Pinterest, like, oh, spray some paint on your hoodie. I'm like, that's me rolling 6-foot rollers, and like I'm getting covered in paint.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
like, feels good to see that sort of stuff. But you know, that was one avenue. Again, like, what I was doing full-time job was a lot of like marketing, branding, social media, a lot of videography, a lot of photography, a lot of art direction. That stuff I really loved. And then there was product design, which is like actually what I went to school for, and that's what was my initial passion, like growing up, is just like objects and environments and things and experiences and systems, and that's like a true ID mentality. And like, I found that I lost a bit of that because where I ended up, although there was a touch of product design, a touch of human interaction, whether that's like booklets or pamphlets or like designing signage in retail, or I'm managing kind of like some very surface level product design in terms of like merchandise and stuff like that. It wasn't like I'm designing a coffee machine or like I'm designing this thing or this is going to change the way somebody operates. And like, although it was rewarding, it wasn't like that at that level. So when I kind of, the last avenue was Coffee and Kicks. And although I've acknowledged my entire life, I've basically come to the reality where influencer life is not real life. It's not real life, and nor is it right, or can I even justify to convince myself to say that I'm going to make a salary off doing this Instagram stuff. And like that was always a passion thing, and it was always a project that I loved. The Coffee and Kicks.
Could be Coffee and Kicks in Ibiza.
Exactly. Jesus Christ. Hey, you never know. If anybody's in Ibiza, let me know. Like, I'll send you I'll send you a quote. I'll send you a quote. You never know. I really loved that page, and it was all purely passion. And I think I've talked about it on the previous pod about like it was a natural progression of just like the two things I love doing, and I was just sharing it online. And the value I got from that was amazing because I met a bunch of people, got opportunities, but it just became like another one of those things within the 5 things that I wanted to do but couldn't necessarily narrow it down. And then I guess very long-winded way of explaining what I'm up to right now. I kind of had a realization about 2 or 3 months ago where I was like, hey, like there's no reason why I can't do all of this. There's no reason why I can't legitimize all of these angles. And maybe it's not me doing 100% of the output, but it's me kind of guiding a team, like developing groups of people who are really talented in those positions that want to execute ideas. And I was like, I didn't realize until last week that I want to make a creative agency. So the new kind of wild project right now is develop a creative agency. And like the big goal is, hey, I'm going to do what's reasonable and what's realistic now, which is a lot of the marketing, branding, social media stuff. Is it's approachable and it's how I'll be able to make income and be realistic. But the end goal would be able to like pitch this entire awesome experience of like, hey, anything in reality that you can think of or conceptualize, like I have a way or a person or a process to produce that, whether that's a product, that's an experience, that's a space, that's an item, that's a graphic, that's an animation, that's a AR experience, that's a campaign, that's a sponsored post, that's a like anything, a mural, or like if you want an influencer to show up, I know a guy. But no, it's just kind of an excuse to like do all of those things. Not even an excuse. It was like a realistic way to actually not pick one and forget the rest. It was like I could do all of those things, live a life where I'm happily in chaos, because I think I excel in chaos. When there's structure, I start to buckle down. And yeah, it was kind of an excuse to just. So that's where I'm at.
It's admirable to see, you know, the barista quits and chases their dream story archetype.
Sure. Absolutely.
But in all seriousness, it definitely, like, I've had the dream before too. You know, like you want to create something of your own, and you know, if you have all this talent around you, you can really solve people's problems, and that's what you're going for, and I'm glad, you know, you're doing it. Thank you. I mean,
it comes with the stress, but it's good
right.
stress. It's happy stress.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is really frustrating, or this is very stressful, or like, oh, but like I'm actually doing something wild, and like, what will this become? I think there's a lot of looking through the stress and looking at the imagination in the back, but we'll see how it pans out.
What have your sort of first steps right now been in setting this up, or like, you know, starting to like work towards this goal?
Define like the big objectives. I think being realistic is number one. Just solidifying the most, like the best opportunities to kind of get a consistent income. Without income, I think it's one thing to like imagine this reality, but like you got to get paid and you got to live. I think, like I mentioned, like the social media, the branding, the marketing is something I necessarily didn't go to school for. It's not something that I am absolutely in love with, but it's something that I'm good at and I'm confident at, and something that I can do that is approachable for a lot of people. And if I can confirm or lock in 3 or 4 kind of projects that I can keep consistent and create income and leverage that into, okay, I'm going to invest in the space, or I'm going to invest in talent, or I'm going to invest in equipment and kind of grow that and do more. I think that's the step number one. I'm lucky enough to have a lot of really cool people, like not only at this table, but around me that are super talented, that want to do cool stuff and want to help out. And whether it's like, okay, they're not maybe making their 100% hourly, but it's they're working towards like being a big picture, like being a part of something really big that could develop. I've got one really awesome homie right now, Thomas, who I actually grew up with, which is wild. We kind of followed a similar path, split up, and then kind of ended up in the same spot. And he is a really talented cinematographer and photographer. So leaning on him a lot to kind of help me make this dream a reality and
to visualize it.
Yeah, and I think I'm a big idea person, and I'm really great at kind of kickstarting projects and I like creating and conceptualizing these opportunities, but it's another thing to like execute. And I'm again confident enough to do this stuff. I'm comfortable to do it, but it's like having that person beside you just makes it so much easier to kind of like go into a meeting and pitch this big idea and be like, no, I can do this. Like I'm not being there like, oh, this is gonna be another late Sunday night, but like I don't have a choice. So it's been really cool. Like that's stage number 1. Lock in some consistency, get some support, and then hopefully that overflows to like, hey, I know product design is a bigger commitment, but maybe some of these clients that are really consistent can see the value and can start to see the value of like, maybe, hey, like they really done a great job here. Like they do that as well. Let's explore that avenue. Or like maybe there's somebody that's not interested in the marketing and the social media stuff and they want to just jump to product. And now I have the flexibility and the comfortability to like pass it on to the team that I've developed and then start to take on those crazy, wild ideas. So
for sure.
I think that's step 1. Hopefully kind of lock that in, but
and
still figuring it out.
Have you sort of made the connection with your friends and family? Just say, hey, I'm back in business, or
that is a part
or
of this,
in business.
That's
That part of the
family definitely, yeah. For like family functions, I'm telling everybody,
Yeah.
and I'm gladly, just like when I was working full time, like was more than happy to like yell at the top of a roof being like, I love what I'm doing and this is what I'm doing. Similar sort of situation where like I'm super excited to just tell people about it, even to just like, hey, that conversation could lead to this, that, whatever, like spirals through the telephone line of like it could end up in somebody that actually wants to work with me. But in terms of like industry homies or people that I've worked with or people that I've kind of like done stuff with, I've not told everyone because I am worried that I've already like kind of committed to a workload that I'm already a little bit stressful about, but I know I can do it. And like, I just know that, hey, if I just started going down that list I was talking about of like, hey, you asked me to do something in 2018, like, are you still interested? Or like, hey, just to let you know, like, I will be calling you, or like, if you want to do something, keep it in mind. Like, I'm already worried that that's going to be crazy, because what was really, really, really awesome to experience was right when I transitioned to this new opportunity and I started to like, okay, I need to start telling some people. I kind of like went through that list of opportunities and people, and I made a big list of homies I really wanted to tell. And if you are watching this and I haven't told you yet, you're probably on that list. But I'm sometimes I just tell
check
people,
your inbox.
yeah, maybe you just not, maybe you don't want to.
It's in spam.
Maybe you haven't responded yet. But no, it was really, really awesome, and I felt like I was doing the right thing, because when I kind of divvied up that list and really just evaluated who was the most important to reach out to first, not that everybody, again, everyone is important. Who I could like who I could comfortably like achieve this goal and like set that up and then take on something bigger. When I reached out to maybe like the first 5 guys who had pitched an idea, I thought it was an awesome idea that I could take on, and I had the flexibility to do it. All 5 of them immediately after or within like the first couple minutes of talking were like, incredible, how soon can we start? And I was like, unreal, because I was like, you jump off this cliff,
Right.
and then you realize, oh, I got to check for the jet, like my my parachute.
Yeah.
I jumped off the cliff and I like started calling people like, hey, you have my parachute. And like everyone kind of showed up and it was super cool because that was like the first 5 people. I'm like, okay, if that's probably because I just picked the right 5 people to reach out to. But I'm like, okay, if I was able to define and like realize who are the right people, there are a lot of people on this list that are an easy second call or like an easy follow-up. And like, I'm not worried. I think I'm more worried about having too much work at this point, which everyone I tell laughs because like, that's not a problem. And like, I get that, but I mean, still got to figure out all the like actual businessy things.
Yeah.
And it's funny to say that, but contracts, like accounts, like paying, like invoicing, all that fun jazz that they don't teach you at OCAD.
Yes.
Yeah, the financial aspect.
That
like,
stuff
how do you
is-
support yourself financially?
Well, like,
That stuff is real.
Yeah. Cold emailing is always the worst, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say, you know, when you have like a family dinner on the holidays, you know,
Yeah.
like I don't know how old-fashioned your family is. Do they understand what you're doing? You
So
know?
I-
how much do they understand?
I'm in a weird place because I can make a lot of jokes about this being like they don't understand, but I'm
Yes.
also in a place where like they really do.
Yeah.
In the sense where again, like full Italian, like my dad was born in Italy, like raised very
Designers.
traditional. My mom also like very traditional Italian, like immigrant family that moved to Canada. Both my grandparents, like sets of grandparents, came to Canada, and what is wild is my dad is very, very analytical. He's very numbers. He's very, very business oriented, very professional. What is wild is my mom has always been a creative her entire life. So where I obviously have the traditional mentality of realism and like check reality, like you're living in La La Land if you think you're going to be a painter your entire life. I also get like a parent and parents who've, like my mom's been a creative her entire life, whether that's been like, she's been a creative director for 3 major companies over the last 30 years. And before that, she was a contract freelance for agencies. And before that, she was like a junior. And she only got to that level because she was consistent and she kind of had to fight her way to get her parents to allow her to kind of take that avenue. And that meant going to school for business and then going back to school to get a degree in graphic design after she had already gone to university. And I was the only way that she could comfortably like get to terms with her parents and let her, like my grandparents, that was the only way that they would let her kind of take that avenue, which is wild because my mom went to OCA in the early 80s, which is cool. So like I'm second gen OCAD, and that's always been like a fun thing because
Did you find her tags?
she's got no Instagram tags from the 80s. No. I'm sure there's something scratched in a wall somewhere, but it's always funny because she's like, I grew up obviously learning. I'm when you meet my family and you meet her, like everyone always says I'm a carbon copy of my mom, and I've obviously grew up with a creative director as a mom, and that's how I was doing grade 6 projects. Like I was on an Adobe account in grade 6 doing doing like crazy stuff. Like
See, everyone else was on like kid pics.
Oh,
and
man,
shit, and
I
you were out
was
here,
thrown
like,
into the
cooking.
fire.
Already working on the industry standard.
Cooking. Let them cook.
Bristol board, what? I was printing out. I was like, guys, I was coming to school with full printouts, laser
Wide
inkjet,
format,
like
yeah.
Illustrator files that are like, oh, I didn't cut and paste this. I
The
did in
don't do
Illustrator.
drug project you did convinced all the kids to do drugs.
Every act, it looked so good.
So it looks so good on there.
They were like, oh, shit, I can't do that.
So it's like it's hard to like make the joke about like how, yes, when I'm in a full-time position and I'm like a comfortable young adult and I have a career and a job and like I have my dad who's very realistic and a very like professional human. He's like, why are you gonna change this up? Like, why are you gonna force this? And then I have my mom on the other side, and my dad who's lived and operated around my mom's reality for so long. So he, unfortunately, like he goes, oh, it's like you're like your mother. Like he's like, you're gonna deal with invoicing, and now you have to deal with this. He's like, your mother used to do this for 15 years, and nobody ever pays her, and we're always fighting about this. And like, I'm like, he's like, I can't change you. You're exactly like her. But he's like, she's done well for herself. Like, obviously, she's done an amazing job, and it's amazing to have that mentorship because like she's experienced this stuff. But then it's also like very crazy to kind of realize that, okay, now it's time for me to do it myself.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, okay, you go retire and go sit around and make pour over coffees because I've taken away your Nespresso machine at home. Like, you learn coffee while I go actually work. But no, it's cool. So I get a lot of the like. My dad's like, you better get used to me saying like, did they pay? Did they pay? I'm gonna tell you every day, did they pay? And that's like been a running joke now because he loves to say that in kind of joke. But no, it's been awesome because I got the actual businessy. Not that my mom's not actual business, but I get the realistic viewpoint, and then I also get the like person who's like pushing me to be like to do all that stuff, which is super cool. So I'd be silly not to take advantage of that. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
See,
where I'm at.
that's very lucky though that you have like that support though, and you have someone who's like, you know, so close to you that's worked in the industry, because like I can tell you from like, for me, neither of my parents
100%
are in the
Yeah,
arts, right? So
same here.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
it's like a crapshoot. You try to talk to them and they're like, great, but are you going to make money? And you're like,
Yeah,
But
legit.
haven't you thought about
"See,
plumbing?
here's the thing.
Yeah.
Construction's, you know,
The trades,
my back
huh?
has at least got another 50 years.
No, absolutely. And like, that's the, like, when I grew up going to Grad X, like, which is
Yeah.
crazy to say.
Oh,
Like,
cool.
legit, I've been to like, when I, the reason,
100 grad X.
no, like when I was in, when I was in thesis and there was the opportunity to join the committee, I was like, little Luke in like grade 5 coming in to go recruit junior designers with my mom.
Yeah.
And she's walking around talking to all these graphic designers. I'm walking around industrial design, like in elementary school, like would have loved to help build this show. And like,
He's got the home court advantage.
yeah, legit. So like,
critiquing people's.
I thought that I was like, it would be silly for me to not give my knowledge because I've been to so many of these.
Yeah.
And no, it was cool. Like, it's crazy to say. I know like people have always like, it's always like the typical like rom-com movie drama high school of like, what am I going to do when I grow up? When am I going to go? Where am I going to go to school? Like, legit, like in elementary school, I knew I wanted to go to OCAD for industrial design, which is wild. And like people don't, I realize that that's not like normal, which is crazy. So like I had that opportunity, and like with somebody who is super supportive and knows what it took, and like literally didn't do her dream so that she can make her parents happy, and then actually went to OCAD. Like having a parent that was like, hey, you have all the talents because you're way better than I was when I was a kid, and you can go and do that stuff. So growing up, I had that flexibility, and like it made a big difference. To like, there wasn't a lot of pushback. There was pushback, but like a lot of like, okay, just know what you're doing. Like, it's not easy, and like, hey,
So like sometimes that's like hard for parents to admit that, like, you know, your kids are progressing faster than me. Like if I ask my dad, like when he used to play soccer, he's like, "Oh yeah, but I was way better than you."
Yeah.
and we didn't have shoes, and we didn't have a ball,
and we walked uphill both ways.
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
winter.
Yeah.
Oh my God. No,
Yeah.
that's it's crazy, and I think it's funny because I've noticed a big change in my dad as well, like in how he perceives what I do, and like there was always a lot of pushback, and then he started to understand, and then he was like, he's like, I get it now, and he's like, he hates admitting it, but he kind of sees the vision, and like there are certain things I'll do where I'll be like, oh, okay, cool. This stuff, like there are a couple like big moments or like projects I got to work on that were really awesome, and he's like, he's in there, like we were talking about the Nike event the other day, and like that's one thing I would love to talk about, but he was there, came to the event, and he was looking around, and he's like, holy, this is real. And I'm like, welcome to what you don't see when I leave the house.
Yeah.
Like, this is the stuff I'm doing and I want to do. And that was like even just a taste of like what's out there and what's possible. And I'm like, there's no reason why you guys have worked your asses off to put me and my brothers in a position where we can take a little bit more risk than you guys did and still be comfortable enough to like kind of like, we know that you guys are there and you're not going to be slinging concrete like until 10 p.m. like my nonna was. So no, it's been cool, and like it's been cool to see them like start to realize the vision. I've officially gotten my first free employee, which is my mom.
Nice.
I've been telling my dad about this podcast for the past like 4 years. He still doesn't know what a podcast is.
Trust me, my dad only got Instagram like 3 weeks ago.
Still a lot of catching up to do. You know? You know, I was going to ask how many people on your Instagram do you think are there for the kicks, and how many are for the coffee?
It's hard to say.
There's no statistic on that on Instagram yet.
Yeah, you can't really define what your audience
Who
is.
liked on the kick or the coffee?
Yeah, it's a weird split, and I have had a hard time defining or like even trying to. I've tried to be like, hey, am I wasting my time like sharing? Not that I'm wasting. Like I do it because I love it, and I don't care who follows it. Like I do it because those are the two things that I'm juggling every day. And okay, if I only post about coffee for 3 weeks, you better be prepared for only coffee for 3 weeks.
Coffee and coffee.
Yeah, and then but if I'm in a big sneaker slump and all I'm doing is opening shoes and wearing shoes or doing this or taking photos of the stuff I have, like be prepared.
Kicks and kicks.
Yeah.
Hey, it's all good, you know.
It's hard to say because I've actually realized there are a lot of people that come in just for one thing because they really enjoy how I show one of those angles and then slowly kind of like really love the other angle. Like I've met a couple sneaker homies in the city, like, and I know this because I've gotten really close with them in real life, and they've actually been like, hey, like I saw that coffee shop, or like I actually want to go check that out, or like, hey, I want to sort of, you're kind of inspiring me to do something at home. Like, what should I buy? And like, I've seen that kind of looking over the fence where they're like, oh, they came for coffee and they're not coffee people. And they're like, hey, I actually want to get a pair of shoes. Like what? I saw those Mocha Jordan 1s. I'm like, those are so cool. I'm like, yeah, that's like such a fun connection of both realities. And they're like, oh, I would get those.
It's like the coffee hipster realizing like, I can drink coffee and look fresh too.
Exactly.
It's like,
that's such a reality. And like, it's hard, again, to put a number on what it is, but I think it's just whether any, like, people find themselves following for whatever reason.
Yeah.
There is a rad group of people who really love both, and I'll notice that, or they'll make comments on both things, or like, I know people that I've met who are big coffee people, or baristas, or work at cafes, or own cafes that are big sneakerheads, or like just, I feel like if you're a creative person, you just like looking good, and like sneakers are one of the maybe 10 things that you can do to look cool in reality. So I think sneakers are like an easy choice to jump into.
Have you ever had like a I don't know, like a slow week and just like, all right, it was fucking, we're here at coffee time and I have some Skechers on.
Yeah.
I
got my slides on. But what I love about your page is that, you know, you really do a good job of documenting like both sides and the culture and like great places in the city, and like I guess maybe you can talk about like what you really love about a little bit of the both, you know.
I think it's really crazy because there are two really awesome angles in the sense where it's like there are a lot of small businesses in both angles, and a lot of homies I've met that are doing really crazy cool things on both angles, whether that's like local sneaker shops, boutique shops, resellers, like, hey, whatever, you do what you do. Like, a lot of people have their own angles. And then on the flip side, a lot of people that are producing coffee, making coffee, or even like featuring coffee shops. I think it's really been awesome to just use that platform and that page to not only just enjoy the stuff that I love, but also like share who's in it, share those spaces, share those people, share those personalities, like kind of talk about those projects. It's kind of inadvertently created a little bit of a message board where like if a homie is doing something and it's, whether it's related to both those topics or not, like it's a place where I can like shout it out and be like, hey guys, like this guy is doing something cool, like check it out. He's doing this or he's doing that. And I think it's, although it was very much initially something that I did because I just wanted to go grab coffee or do homework somewhere, it became like a commute, like that's the most cheesy thing in the world. Like, oh, it's a community, but like
it is.
There's how else do you describe that connection of people? Like it became like a really interesting community of people that are like in both of those angles. And not to say that I'm a force in the industry or I'm a strong voice, but like it gave me an opportunity to talk and even if 10 people see that, that's 10 extra people that didn't see that business or that space or that location or that product. So yeah, it's been cool. It's been cool to use it in a positive way.
What was the most you ever spent on a coffee? You know.
On a coffee. I thought you were going to say sneaker.
On a kid.
No. I was like that confidential.
Oh.
You know, on a coffee. You know?
No, nothing too crazy on either.
Too crazy? Oh, okay.
Coffee. I don't know if I
don't have to say a place. Just
I'm trying to think. Like, there's got to be.
Okay. Well, if you have to think
about
about
it,
it,
you
then
know
it's
what?
not too bad. Okay.
I'll make it. This is a funny way to say it.
All right.
I went to Japan and had a great coffee. That is an expensive flight ticket to get that coffee. So
And then went back.
and then went back. Exactly. I had to actually walk home that.
wow.
So I couldn't afford. Once I bought the coffee, I really
That was
that
it.
was the
yeah,
last
that was it.
$450. No, I'm joking.
Had to sell the shoes
Kicks
right off your
wore
feet.
down.
Yeah, kicks gone. Sold in
Sometimes
Japan.
the $5 Americano feels like a slap in the face.
There
sometimes,
actually, now that I'm thinking about, there was a place in Yorkville. I can't remember for the life of me what the name was. I know that they're not open anymore. It was, I think maybe if people remember, I think it was called like Borough 53 or there's a number 52, 50, something like that. It's a small spot, but there was one guy who's a really talented coffee expert. I think he's still in Toronto. He works at a place called Third Wave. And he made a turmeric latte, I believe. And I remember him telling me like turmeric, like the spice is just such an expensive material.
Yeah.
I think it's turmeric. Not 100% sure if it's
Sweeter, spicy.
Yeah.
something like that. And he made a latte with it, and he's like,
Probably
this
sweet.
little jar is like $150. I was like,
Oh wow.
and he's like, I put a little dash in every latte. So I was like, maybe that is the most expensive latte I've ever had. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Well, it's good you picked coffee. You know, they can't
Yeah.
get like too expensive. You know.
yeah.
But if you were like Kicks and I don't know burgers or something.
Kicks and
you know?
cars, like
Kicks and cars, yeah, cars and kicks.
Kicks and
you know. Then that can get a.
I think
Teas and
pricey.
sneakers.
It's very.
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard all of them, all of the little, all the changes
All the
every single
changes.
time.
Yeah. 'Cause I had a burger yesterday for like $23, and that was enough. I have to be clean from burgers for the next 3 weeks to pay that off.
I had a personal pizza yesterday. It was like $26. It was like 4 slices. And I
So
was like,
coffee's the good niche.
Yeah, it's approachable. So
Yes.
like I had one funny example where I actually it was my birthday recently. My girlfriend got me a pair of Nike Air Kokunis, which are in like a leopard kind of colorway, which is really wild, and I love those shoes. It's like an obscure Air Max that they brought back recently. They really look almost exactly like her cat. I thought it was hilarious. So I made like a funny video of like opening the shoes, and I threw the box, but I cut it, and the box stays, and then I open the box and it's the cat inside. And then I was like, and then I like do a transition to reveal the shoe.
Yeah.
And I had one homie who was like, "Coffee and kitties, let's change the page." And I'm like, so I've gotten everything under the sun.
Everything,
Like you do anything, and people are like, "Oh, that's it. Now you got to change your account. Like
amazing.
you can't be a coffee anymore."
Yeah.
But yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
You should take a look at some of the images that.
We
Yeah.
can,
Hey,
we can go through some.
They're over here. So yeah, this was one that actually kind of wild, kind of bringing it back to the moment where my dad was like, "Oh, this is kind of real." This is actually a Nike pop-up that I was able to help put together with my job. So I was at FIMA Canada I was the creative director there, and I'm lucky enough to have guys who worked there. Mike, shout out to Mike, who was the one that kind of put me in there and kind of trusted me in taking on that position. He's the third generation of a family business, and he kind of understands like the crazy ideas and why it's important to do stuff like that. And he's a big sneakerhead also, which was awesome. And like that's a fun camaraderie thing, but also like it gave me the excuse and the opportunity to like leverage sneaker connections into like, hey, how can we meet these homies and put them into actually cool projects? And it was awesome because I had met a bunch of really good, awesome people at Capsule, which is an amazing boutique in Toronto. And
Right.
Yeah.
I've done stuff with them in the past through Coffee and Kicks, and those guys like Justin, Jason, Eric, Edwin, Stan, and am I missing anybody? No. Tyler took all these photos, by the way. Incredible photographer.
Shout out.
They are an awesome group of guys, and basically when I was working, I had all those sneaker homies, I had my FIMA homies, and I was like, hey, we should do something wild. And that turned into, let's do some sort of crazy pop-up. Let's do some sort of event together. And then it was like, hey, should we ask Nike if they want to be a part of this? And that simple idea that we had turned into a 2-year or like a year-long process of like, we had meetings with Nike, and it was like wild to work with. Like, they say never work with your heroes. It was very tough to like manage that project, but like looking at that stuff like feels
Worth it?
Feels crazy. It was definitely worth it. It was such an awesome memory, and like to be able to like roll into a new creative agency and say, hey, I've done stuff like that. It just feels, just adds like a level of confidence, and like
looks so clean.
Looks reality, looks like reality. So what ended up happening with that event was when we got all the guys together, we pitched this crazy idea to Nike, and we had got connected with a bunch of the guys there that work at Nike Toronto, and like they digested the idea, and they're like, oh, we put this pitch together, we had lunch, and we did all this stuff, and we had planned like this angle of where we wanted to incorporate like the coffee dip dyeing shoes, and that was something we really wanted to do. And we pitched the idea, and they're like, okay, we're gonna think about this, and we'll figure it out, and this, that, whatever. And like, hey, we're thinking about doing this for the 40th anniversary, or I think that came in after the fact, but we wanted to do this around the time conveniently that was the 40th anniversary of Air Force One. And we had this meeting, and they're like, okay, we'll let you know. Like, we're gonna bring this back, and we didn't hear anything for like 6 months.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
And then it was like around the time, like maybe 2-3 months before we wanted to execute, and they're like, one of the Nike guys reached out, and they're like, hey, like, when are we doing this? And we're like, what do you mean, when are we doing this?
I'm homeless now.
What? And we're like, okay, let's get on it. And like, it was crazy because we went 0 to 60 real quick, and it was like wild because it's like you look at this massive corporation. I'm like, here's me, kid out of OCAD, working at this awesome coffee position, like doing the stuff that I dream about, and like I'm here pitching ideas with Nike, like creating product, creating an experience, and like that kind of spiraled. We wanted to do the dip dyeing, but it turned into a more realistic idea. Was like do a coffee shop, create a retail experience that's for the community, but also celebrating that silhouette. And we ended up with this event, which was a 24 hours. It was a 4-day event. Coffee bar, free coffee.
Nice.
A ton of like really cool goodies that proudly I got to design from the ground up in partnership with Nike and produce myself, which was wild. And that was my big contribution to like managing the project. And they took a massive lead on building the space, and Capsule took a massive lead on the programming and execution of like laying out how we would operate and how we would do this. And Nike built an incredible space, and I got to create staff custom merch for everybody. We got to do a whole bunch of cool tote bags that were all custom made. We got to design all of the like coffee cups and all of like the small goods that we're giving out to people. And then one really cool thing that I had done just for fun at OCAD, which was like kind of a little side project where I just laser cut some PETG, which is like food safe plastic, to do cocoa stencils on my coffees at home. And I had, at that meeting, done with those stencils, I made one custom at RP and brought it and pitched it to Nike. And I was like, hey, we made them coffees at our office. And they're like, this is so cool. Like, and that became like a big moment in the event where it was like, hey, how quickly can you make 500 of those stencils? And like, they were really interested in like, it was crazy to see the like mindset and the mentality behind Nike and like how they operate and how they make events memorable. And they're like, this is a really cool thing that people, you got to focus on like, what do you take away from that event? And like, what do people remember? And that coffee stencil was like, that was the wow. It's like one thing to do a coffee, but then it's like, how do you make that a memory? How do you make it a photo moment? How do you make it like last a lifetime, like make an impact? And they were like, we want to make so many because we want to just casually give them to people. And like, we would make a couple, and then like, hey, if you had a really good connection with somebody, or like you want to give somebody, like just pull one out and like, hey, you take the stencil, use it at home. And like, that was the like, oh my God, some sneakerhead who came to that coffee pop-up, I'm gonna have this, I got this at a Nike event, and like, I'm totally that, I don't want to say sucker, but like, I'm totally that sucker where I have so much stuff from like these events, or like where I've done things with companies. I'm like, I have this little shelf of memorabilia, I want to call it. And like things like that are on there. And like, they were so right. Like the homies of mine that came and got one of those stencils, like always send me pictures of it or use it in this, that, whatever. And it was like that moment. So it was cool to not only, I want to say I was the reason why that event happened, humbly, like, I think I am the reason why Nike and Capsule connected, and then hopefully I gave enough cool ideas to make it a real idea. And then, not that I got Nike in the door, but I don't think we would have even asked Nike if it didn't happen.
Basically, you made Nike.
Where's the check, Nike? No, I'm fine. I'm happy with the experience, but no, it was really cool. And like, not only to like kickstart that idea and like have a part in creating that, being able to like say that I actually physically like designed product that was a focal point in the event, it was like really feels really rewarding. So Hopefully, Nike, if you're seeing this, let's do it again. Like
It,
I'm more available to do even bigger and better, not better things. Like that was amazing, but
Multi-city tour.
Sorry.
Multi-city tour.
Oh, absolutely.
Across North America.
Like probably imagine like in that moment, you know, it's like it's a 4-day event, but you're like always on all the time, and you know you're there to live it up because it's like
it was crazy because at first we were like, oh, we'll be the baristas. We'll like Mike, who's my who was my lead at Fiamma. We're like sort of thinking like, oh, how crazy could it be? Sort of deal. Like, what do you think could happen? Like this, that, whatever. And we're like, we'll just serve the coffees ourselves. And like quickly realized, and when we were doing the programming and all the stuff, and like realized how many people would probably be there. It was hard to say because we were just like we had no clue. But we realized like, hey, maybe it's smart to get a roster of baristas. And then that was a cool moment where it was like, we got to feature a bunch of local baristas. And that was, again, another community thing where it's like, not only are we having this event and doing this thing, but we're shining light on all of these awesome, talented people. And it was like awesome because then it was like, not only me being there, I got a chance to like be there, be present, and like talk to people and interact and like kind of just advocate for who we are and why and what Fiamma is and why we're partnered there. But it gave us a really cool opportunity to like put the homies on the spot as well and like get cool baristas, like a whole bunch of homies that came out, and it was like not as stressful as I thought it was gonna be. But I think we did like just over 4,000 cups in 4 days, which is crazy. Free coffee, which is sick. So
your go-getter attitude is very, very admirable. You know,
Thank
just
you.
the way in which you've built something from the ground up.
Usually.
I'm sure you inspire a lot of people. You've inspired me. I'm going to start a new page called Boots and Beer.
That's a big one.
Tonight. But, you know, we're running out of time. But you know what? We can't just leave you empty-handed. You
Never
brought
leave
us
you
all this
empty-handed.
wisdom.
Yes, so much
So
wisdom.
we actually brought something for you.
Got you a gift. Yes.
Wow.
Love to give our gifts.
well,
Holy.
Gift.
Holy.
It's been here the whole time. You probably didn't even know.
Way,
Some lovely coffee beans for
Unreal.
you.
Thank you so much.
The guy at the store recommended. He said it's very good for a
Yes.
drip espresso.
it's just like Nona used to make.
For the people who want to know, toffee, milk chocolate, and creamy. Caramel. Oh, that's just caramel. I saw like some I was like, oh, that's just the French version.
Oh, it's fancy.
Ooh, signature blend.
As a final
Thank you,
point,
guys.
Very welcome.
you know, you are Coffee and Kicks, but
There's shoes here?
but no.
You don't get that
Next
much
episode.
You didn't even ask my size.
Yeah.
It's okay, I can sell them.
You are the sneaker guy, but you also got some watches in your little collection there.
Not
Wait.
plural watches. Watch.
Period. Is a Tudor Black Bay?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That is
It's a
like
good one.
I think you know about the watch, but I was gonna tell you like
Okay. All right.
I'll give you guys the background why this.
Okay.
I'm a big like definitely crazy purchase, but I'm like if I'm gonna get something and do like a congratulations, it was a gift from my parents for graduating, and like if I'm gonna wear something for the next 40 years of my life, I want it to be like super uber cool and like, not that it's like just flashy and crazy, but I want it to like actually mean something and represent who I am. And a bit of the background behind Tudor is in the early 50s when Rolex was making Submariners, and they were kind of like the premium product. There were a bunch of companies that were kind of ripping them off. And although they wanted to maintain like the branding and the quality, these brands were making things that looked like them but weren't the same quality. The problem was all of the blue collar workers, all of the people that just needed a watch to work and be on site were buying the cheaper watches because like the justification of the expense was way too crazy. So in like the early or late 50s, Rolex ended up buying out one of the biggest competitors to just wipe them out and basically built an exact replica of that crazy branded Rolex Submariner, which is like uber expensive because I guess it's quality. A lot of it is branding and expense for justification. It's a logo, it's a brand. Like it says a lot of like
Status.
It's status, and that's
symbol.
what it is. And they wanted to control and maintain their quality. And if people were going to buy a lesser brand, they wanted to make sure that it still maintained that quality. And if it was going to look the exact same, they wanted to make sure it functioned the same. So the history of Tudor and this style is the blue collars Rolex. It was like the Rolex that you could wear to the job site, you could weld in, you could be a carpenter, and it was just as quality, and it would last you for an eternity, and it was something that your kids could give. And like the mentality of that, and like the idea in me of like, I just want to be in a welding shop all day. I don't want to be at a desk, and like I want to be in the wood shop at OCAD, or I want to be laser cutting shit, and like the like mentality of like working hard and if you know, it's become a now like if you know what kind of watch it is like, I think it's one thing to just get the flashy thing that's expensive. It's another thing to get something intentional that isn't really as expensive. Still, I mean, it's not a cheap thing, but if I'm gonna wear, like I said, like it was a gift, and if I had a choice, I made a choice on something that actually was meaningful, that I will gladly wear this thing for the next 45 years, and I will beat this thing to absolute death, and it will just look cooler as it gets.
Of course,
And like, I'm also like, I'm again with my sneakers as well. I'm big mentality of like, if I'm gonna get a pair of shoes, I've worn every single pair of shoes I've ever owned, whether
good to hear.
Whether that's a terrible decision or not. So
you know what? I love that everything ties in together. You share a lot of wisdom. I'm sure by the time we record the next podcast with you, you'll have a Submariner on your
that'll be on
my agency is doing very
that'll
well,
be if my agency even exists then. But
your next account will come out too. It's going to be like wine and watches. And it's just
no, guys, you can't forget your roots. That's what it is.
Of course, But thank you so much for being here.
You
Is there anything you want to quickly plug?
Nothing too crazy. I mean, hey, I think it's too early to say what the branding and everything of their agency is. Keep an eye out for that. If you want to hear about all that stuff and see it, at _ coffee and kicks. I'm trying to trademark so I can get rid of that underscore. But at the moment, it's at _ coffee and kicks. That's where you'll find me and all of my crazy stuff. I know these guys love to call me Luke CEO, but that's also my Instagram and a part of my last name. So you can find me there. And one cool thing, I've got a cool project that I'm helping out, and also my girlfriend, who's an awesome artist, visual artist as well. There's a event that's happening on February 15th, I think is the day that this is going live. It'll be 5 to 7 p.m. and basically a very close friend of mine is opening a new studio that he's a boutique furniture dealer.
Cool.
Designers and creatives and architects who don't necessarily have a brand or a shop, but want somewhere to sell like very
nice
one of one or like very boutique style furniture. So she's doing a gallery based on the furniture, and will be a party to celebrate kind of the opening. So if you're around, come through.
Hell yeah.
Modulo Shop, and
we'll see you there.
Sarah Lilly is the artist. So shout out to everybody.
Shout out.
All right.
Shout out mom and dad.
Shout out.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Man.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Sure.
And we'll
thank
see you next time.
so much for watching. Take
See
care.
you guys for watching.